From WIS Columbia, the station you count on for local news. This is WIS News 10's Newswatch with David Stanton.
One of South Carolina's U.S. senators has led the fight against so-called earmarks in Congress. Earmarks are special requests for funding projects made by lawmakers. Senator Jim DeMint even sponsored a bill to ban earmarks, or at least to have a moratorium on them for a year, which came up for a vote recently, and Senator DeMint is with us today on Newswatch. And thank you for talking with us.
David, glad to talk about my favorite subject.
I know you are.
Maybe it's my least favorite subject.
But you kind of ran into a buzzsaw with the vote last week.
Yeah, I did, but we didn't really need to win it, because the first part of winning this battle is just making the point. And a lot of that, I'm afraid, is embarrassing some of these senators who have been asking for these ridiculous project. It wasn't too long ago when we talked about earmarks, it was generally a federal project, a federal bridge around an interstate, something of national significance. But it's grown from just a couple of hundred during Reagan's years to almost 15,000, which means we spend most of the year deciding where we're going to put a water and sewer plant and a bike path and a museum, and we're not tending to the business of the nation. I mean, we know we've got a broken tax code, Social Security, Medicare, and we're not dealing with those issues. And so I came to Washington to work on those big issues, but I found out that I'm not going to be able to get any of that done unless we get our minds off local issues that are designed to buy votes. So we tried to do it through persuasion, and that didn't work. So we tried the moratorium, but in the process, even though it was voted down, we got all three of the presidential candidates, Republican and Democrat. We got all the Republican leadership to vote for it in an agreement to come up with a reform package. So I've told the fellow senators I'm going to use every procedure, every rule, everything I can do to attack and to stop earmarks this year until we get reform. And then I think maybe we can get control of it.
Dr. Andrew Sorensen, I don't know if you saw this, had an op-ed about earmarks recently, and he said through the earmark process, universities secured funding to jumpstart promising areas of research, and the researchers are battling cancer, advancing our understanding of alternative fuels, that sort of thing. He said earmarks are a good thing for South Carolina.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of university presidents who would disagree with it, and some of them no longer take earmarks. And there's a difference between a grant and an earmark. A grant is generally, it comes out of a federal pool of money that's designed for a particular purpose, like research for cancer. But universities compete for that money based on certain criteria and the ability to actually do the research. And instead of me saying I want this to go to a college that may not be able to do the research, you have to compete for it. So more and more colleges are seeing that they're more likely to get funded in a predictable way for research through the grant process than through just political earmarking, which is generally for 1 year and oftentimes does not sustain itself long enough to actually get any results.
He said that a small portion of their research money comes from earmarks, but he also said, to the point that you just made, that the top 5 states get an overwhelmingly disproportionate amount of this grant money.
Right.
And South Carolina is in like the bottom 20 that get like 8% or something of it. So he says he feels like the University of South Carolina is at a disadvantage in getting this kind of money.
Getting the grant money or the earmark?
The grant money.
Well, if you have 535 congressmen and senators competing to take money back to their colleges and their district and their states, the money is not going to go where it's going to work the best. And many times we have not been getting grant money. A lot of times I found we weren't applying. We weren't doing a good job of writing the grant. And many times we didn't have the people that could qualify to do it. And that's the way it should be. Now, I'd like South Carolina to get more money, but I think we're seeing in the last couple of years, and I believe Dr. Sorensen as well as Jim Barker at Clemson, they're seeing if they do it right, and they have the right expertise to write the grants, that they get more of the money and they can get more of it regularly than we have in the past. I think we're starting to do that with hydrogen research and other things, and we'll do more of it. But we need to do a lot more work on being competitive. But it shouldn't be handed out based on seniority or who's in the majority, because we see that while 1 or 2 of those a year might be worthy, most of them are not going where they should be going.
So you don't use earmarks?
Not anymore. Now, I'm a recovering earmarker. I mean, when I first went to the House, I was told the only way to get the fair share for South Carolina is to go up and ask for earmarks. And we did. We got some road money like I-73, and that's a federal project. I felt good about that. But when I saw how earmarks were being used, give a little bit to all the members in order to pass these bills that were way over budget and had terrible policy in them, and people would say, Jim, I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't vote for this, but I've already done a press release on this earmark in the bill. I've got to vote for it. And I saw that the reason we went from no budget deficit to huge budget deficit could be traced back to those earmarks. So earmarks in and of themselves are not a big percent of the budget, but they are the reason people don't care about how much.
But here's the counter argument to that. Last year, about $17 billion in earmarks, over 11,000 projects. Somebody's getting all that money. And if you're not getting it for South Carolina, then is South Carolina missing out?
It's not necessarily true. Many times when we earmark something like in the transportation bill, it just comes out of our total state budget that we were getting anyway. So instead of it going according to state priorities, the state legislature and our highway department, I decide where I want it to go. And it may be, if I'm a congressman, I want it to go in the upstate. And we're finding instead of getting the right projects done, and we have a bridge in South Carolina where a lot of federal money has been designated for that, which could be used other places. It's not a state priority, but it is a political priority, and it's not the way it should be done.
But you would admit, though, that South Carolina is going to lose out on some money if you don't accept any earmarks.
Not in the long term. What we've done, so when I went to Congress, we were getting less than 80 cents on a dollar back for the money we were sending to Washington. By trying to change the formula, and I've worked on that on the Transportation Committee in the House and the Senate, to now we get 90 cents on a dollar. The best way for us to get our money back is a formula where we get back, it should be 95 or 97% with the rest of the money going for federal highway maintenance. But until we get it on a formula basis, we can't plan 10 and 15-year projects. You can't build I-73 on earmarks. I mean, it's going to be $1 billion project. We got enough money to get a lot of it started, but we need to have a formula of federal, state, and probably some private funding to get it done. And so, no, I don't think we'll lose out. We might in any given year, instead of getting an earmark for the medical university of $1 million, we might not get that. But most of the time when we get an earmark, it comes out of a bigger pool of money that we were going to get anyway, but it just wasn't directed according to what I wanted it to do.
So is the formula that you're talking about something that is doable?
It is doable, particularly in the transportation area, because there are more states that are donor states like South Carolina, which means we send more than we get back, and we could get the political pull to make that happen. On some other areas, like research for cancer, it really depends on our expertise here as a state. And I think one thing we do need to do when we design grants and programs is to designate part of that money to smaller states or rural areas or developing colleges. We can do that in general and then have the smaller colleges compete. But when we send money to a college that is not prepared to do a certain type of research, and that's what we've done for years, instead of sending it to the major research universities, we spread the money around and we don't get the best result. So sometimes it's not as good politically not to get money for your district, because those press releases are nice. I brought home all this money. But we're wasting money and the federal government's in debt. And frankly, we're spending ourselves into such a large hole. If we can't stop a Woodstock hippie museum or a bridge to nowhere, there's no way we're going to solve our big financial problems.
One other question. What do you think about all this talk about Jim DeMint on the short list as a vice presidential running mate with Senator McCain?
I think I'm going to keep the job that I've got. And so I think as many times as McCain and I have butted heads on issues, I don't think there's much chance of that.
Senator DeMint, thanks for taking time to talk
David.
to us. Hope we can have you back. And we'll be back after this.